I want to talk about your new show, A New Leaf,
Yeah.
which is a partnership with Ancestry.com. And you go around the country and you go to people and you help them connect with their roots and their heritage.
It's really interesting because not only do I get to meet people and talk to people, but it's really meeting them at an important time in their life and getting to share with them moments that mean a lot to them. And it's really filled with a lot of discovery and usually joyful. So we're using ancestry and DNA and records to connect people with their ancestors, with their family history, and for them to either, they're either at an important point in their life where they have to make a choice, some decision, or they lack knowledge or understanding of their background. And I feel like once some of these people fill in the blanks and connect the dots, life makes so much more sense to them. Once they really gain knowledge of who their ancestors were, where they come from, what they did, who they were, once they see their photos and really look at them and read, and sometimes they get to really understand what they did and things from realizing they were connected to famous people like Andrew Carnegie, or realizing that they had important people do really significant things in their background, or people who had lived through being enslaved people, lived through emancipation, and these are moments that really change who you are and the understanding of where you come from. So it's really a fun and interesting show to be a part of.
So how does that, the technology involved with it, how does it even work, Ancestry.com? Is it using DNA? Is it using records?
Both.
Yeah.
I think the DNA helps a lot because it can go back and track your specific DNA. But then, so census helps us a lot, the U.S. Census. That it gets a little trickier.
You see it's all written?
Yeah.
I watched some of the episodes of the show.
Right, so the census will help us track people even as far back as coming into the country. We can get ship logs and we'll get their names and where they came from.
Somebody took the Queen Mary over.
Exactly.
It's sort of amazing to me when you watch the show, you see all the records. It's amazing to me that they even kept all that stuff. Where do they keep all that stuff? Just in the...
I know. The Ancestry folks really help a lot, and they do a lot of work with this. I wish I could take all the credit, but I do all the fun part of putting it all together and presenting it to the people. But it's also easier for all of us to go to the site and start doing it for ourselves, because it becomes a lot easier for us to connect the dots. It becomes like a puzzle. You can really, from one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you have a lot of pieces to your life that you didn't know even existed.
Did you go and look at your roots and lineage?
I'm in the process of doing that right now.
Oh,
yeah. I became really interested in it, but like I was going to say, it becomes a little more difficult when you go to other countries because the records are not as available. My background is Cuba and Spain.
Yes.
And it becomes a little trickier. You don't have the census and you don't have all.
Okay. You were born in Cuba.
I was born in Cuba, and when I was 3, went to Spain and lived in Spain till I was 8.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's more American.
It's a little bit easier. We have better kept records.
Have people always been interested in looking back at their roots like this, or is this a new phenomenon because of technology?
I don't think so. I don't think people have been as interested, and maybe because it hasn't been available. But I think once you realize what it means for you and the understanding that you can have for yourself, it really does make a difference. And then I think that's when people get more interested.
So is there an episode where something that happened that just really stands out for you? Something you must have seen some amazing, moving reactions from people.
Well, one of them was a mother-daughter where the mother didn't know a lot about this one side of her family, and she got to know a lot about her great-great-grandmother, and actually seeing a picture of this woman.
Yeah.
And she's the one that was one of the few people who actually had an interview once she was freed from slavery. And it was written in her own words. And the daughter was now reading this letter in those exact words. And they both broke down. And there was a feeling of connection. And that was really emotional
The fact that they actually had a letter that was written by her great-great-grandmother, too, was
Yeah,
sort of
it was
unbelievable
documented.
to me.
It was, yeah.
It made me want to go try it myself. I mean, to think that there could
Exactly.
be actually that kind of much information
Sure.
just floating around out there.
Sure. There was another guy who just thought his family were just like kind of like a bunch of hooligans. And he goes, you know, they were all just a bunch of Southerners who just like, you know, were making like moonshine. They were doing nothing. And he got to find out that a couple of his relatives were real heroes from the Revolutionary War, and they were really respected people. And it really changed the way he looked at his family and his history and the way he looked at himself. And you can see that process changing in the person. You can see them kind of take a little bit more pride in themselves, and you can see that that's going to change who they are going forward.
So I was there in 1999. What year were you at MTV?
I was there from 89 to about 98.
Oh, okay, so you left right before I got there.
Yeah.
Those were the peak years of
They
MTV.
really were.
MTV's changed a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, is it still around?
Yeah, it's a lot of reality shows and stuff. But back then, that was the only place you could see music.
Yeah. That was
So-
really the only place you could get a lot of news on a lot of pop culture. You know, it was the only place you could go behind the scenes with fashion, with music. You could get world premieres of videos, first views and interviews with A-list rock stars, and you know, now they're giving it to you themselves on social media. So,
What were some of the coolest A-list rock star interviews you got to do?
well, one of the first ones, actually the first one that I was kind of just thrown into, and it was very early on. I had just done a few episodes of MTV Latino, and we went to, I think it was maybe like one of the first few video music awards in LA, and it was backstage, and they just said, "Oh, go, go, go! Look, it's Steven Tyler." And I freaked out. I almost like went into convulsions. I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" Like, I was so not prepared for any of this.
Right.
I'm 20 years old. It's Steven Tyler.
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
not ready. And I think he kind of sensed that I was really nervous and I had no idea what I was doing, and he started having a little fun with me.
Yeah.
And he just started kind of like blowing in my ear, and he was like making me more nervous and just having a little fun. And I just, I remember it fondly because he made that little bit kind of fun and funny.
Did you realize you were a trailblazer at the time?
Of course not.
No? So when you were the first Latina VJ doing bilingual programming? and-
Yeah. I remember hearing the word crossover after. I remember people saying, "Oh, because you've done this crossover thing, you know, from Spanish to English." And I remember not knowing what that word meant because it didn't really exist, because nobody was really doing that. And to me, it was just me doing what I did. I speak Spanish and English. And so I was just doing what I didn't think I was doing anything special, but apparently it was something that wasn't done often. You either did television in Spanish or you did it in English, and you didn't often get a chance to do it in both, or much less, you know, cross over.
Was there challenges that you faced with that?
Not that I knew of, because I wasn't aware of it. And when you're that young and you're not really focused on it, it isn't until people start telling you what the problems are, and it isn't until people start telling you what you're doing that you become focused on what the problems are. So I didn't realize what the challenges were. I didn't realize that there weren't many Latinas on television. I was really young and so excited about this opportunity that I thought I was going to have for maybe a few months left, and I was then going to go be a cashier at some like retail store or something, because I was just, you know, it was a fluke, and I was just going to enjoy it for as long as it lasted.
Yeah.
But the more it went on, the more I realized, wow, there's not a lot of, you're right, there are not a lot of Hispanics on American television, and there are many Hispanics in this country. This is kind of, I'm starting to understand what people are talking about.
And is Hollywood, is it doing a better job now representing Hispanic people? Or?
Not really, a little bit. You know, from when I started, sure.
Yeah.
Is it where it should be from where I started? No, no. I mean, no. There are a few Hispanic, Latin names that we could shoot off the top of our head, but is that significant? No, considering the amount of talent that is out there.
Never miss a beat. Subscribe to Larry King now and watch new episodes every day.